All right. And we are live. Welcome in, guys, to the Coach Steve Sunday morning fantasy football talk, breakdown, Q&A, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, I did this last Sunday. Thought it was a lot of fun just to go on 30 minutes, just come in and talk about every game real quick and kind of go through some fantasy breakdown, maybe some injuries that we maybe didn't cover on our Thursday show completely. So I'm going to just continue to go. And if you have any fantasy questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat below here on our YouTube channel, whether you're listening, wherever you're listening to. Would greatly appreciate it. Starting off with the Packers-Falcons here. Obviously, big injury news here that it seems like both Aaron Jones and Christian Watson are not going to play today in today's matchup. Again, not official yet, but as of overnight, that is the growing speculation that neither one will be playing in this matchup here. So I already had, Aaron Jones, Jordan Love as a potential sleeper quarterback in this matchup here. I don't think that changes still. What we saw at week one is testimony that he is going to have a pretty good season this year, I think, and Falcons secondary really don't scare me that too much. So if you're looking for a sleeper quarterback in a 1 QB league, I think Jordan Love, or if you're streaming quarterback, it's a pretty good matchup. He's great in super flex leagues, obviously. Obviously, Aaron Jones not potentially playing in this game will open up the door for a guy like A.J. Dillon, who, again, last week, not the greatest week, but I think there's potential for him to actually have a good week in this matchup here. Again, last year, he did pretty good last year down the stretch of the season here. And, last week, very inefficient week, unfortunately. But Aaron Jones should work out as a possible, low-end or wide running back 2 in this matchup here. I think maybe high-end 3 is a more realistic situation here. I'd love to see more out of him, but just not the way things go with him. But I think you could still be more confident to start him in your lineups this coming week. Obviously, a guy like Patrick Taylor got called up from the practice squad, and obviously Emmanuel Wilson is on the team as well. Again, they're a little bit more of a speedster back compared to what A.J. Dillon is. But A.J. Dillon should be the main concern on the team here this week. Christian Watson, like I said, he is out in this matchup too. Romeo Doubs, I think, gives himself a pretty solid wide receiver 3 value this week in this matchup here. I mean, I do believe that the Falcons secondary is a bit underrated, but Romeo Doubs should have a pretty good week here. Again, it gives another chance to see Jaden Reed on the field here. Hopefully he can kind of show off finally. He didn't really do too much in his last game, but he got 40 yards. That was pretty good. Again, look for Luke Musgrave if Christian Watson is out to have more targets, hopefully in week 2 here in a very favorable matchup. Falcons have been terrible against tight ends over the last few years now. So that is great news for him. Looks like you have a question in the chat here already. How's it going today? Start for PPR, Garrett Wilson, Debo Samuel, Rashad White, A.J. Dillon, Connor, and Kelly. I decided I'm going with Garrett Wilson, Debo, and Dillon, I think. I'm low-key thinking about benching Wilson, but I don't know if I should. All right. That's a great question here, honestly. PPR, you have to start Debo. I like A.J. Dillon, especially if Aaron Jones is out. He should see enough work in the volume game there. Yeah, it's really tough about Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson really hasn't done well against with Zach Wilson as his quarterback overall here. And in a matchup where the Cowboys, I don't think the Cowboys are going to be this elite defense to the point what we saw in week 1. They're going to be great, obviously. And I think you should feel good enough to start Garrett Wilson. I don't think the upside is there anymore for him to have an 8-reception, 120-yard game week in and week out now. But he should be able to still command 6 or 7 targets in this matchup here. So I think you should start him still. Again, I understand benching him. I know that I told somebody in a different situation to bench him, but based on what you're giving me here now, Garrett Wilson should still be starting. Rashad White and Connor, yeah, that's interesting there for sure. Man, what I would do here in this situation is go with the better offense. And what the Bears showed us last week, their defense still doesn't look too good. The Giants coming into the season were a defense that was an up-and-coming defense that looked good. The only thing between the two is that James Conner is going to see the opportunity, but is it going to be effective, efficient opportunity with Joshua Dobbs as quarterback? That's the main concern here. I would lean towards Rashad White in this situation here. I do expect him to have a much better week than what we saw in week 1 from him overall. So go Pats. Well, we'll see how that goes tonight, my friend. But yeah, Garrett Wilson, Debo, Rashad White, and A.J. Dillon, I think, are your best bets in this situation here overall. So But we'll see how the Patriots do tonight. All right. And again, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it always. Please subscribe to our channel. Again, back to this Falcon-Packers game here. Falcons side of the ball, the only people I'm really looking to start here in this matchup here are the running backs. I mean, BJ Robinson should still be an RB1 in this matchup here this week here. Should still command, I think he'll see even more work hopefully this week, which would obviously bring down Tyler Algier a bit. But I think Tyler Algier is flexible in the right situation here. I don't think they're going to just go away from him after giving him as much work as he did and was actually very successful with it. You just don't turn away from a good thing from him. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Again, I'm not really trying to start these guys. Honestly, there's just no point towards it. I mean, Kyle Pitts, you might have to because he's your only tight end or whatever it may be. But Drake London is a confirmed sit until I know that he's going to see some consistency in his fantasy day here. I know you might have drafted him somewhat high, but I'm not going that direction with a guy like Drake London. Kyle Pitts, like I said, you're starting him because he's your tight end one, but I haven't finishing outside of the top 13 this week, so not the best matchup for Kyle Pitts either. All right, Raiders, Bills. This is going to be a fun game, obviously. We're hoping that the Bills offense does bounce back. Obviously, Josh Allen had a terrible week 1 here. We're hoping that he can kind of get back on track. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 1. Gabe Davis is the real situation where whether or not you're going to start him or not. And I think if you're in a situation where you need a boom week, I think this is that Gabriel Davis boom week you're going to get out of him this week here. Again, he's a boom or bust wide receiver. It's just plain and simple. I don't think he's ever going to be a consistent high-end or wide receiver 2 that you can rely on every week. But in this matchup, it is very favorable towards him. James Conner, locked and loaded RB2 this week here. I saw good things from him from week 1, the speed, the burst, the fact that he carried majority of the workload on the offense there. He should be in line for a pretty solid week this week. The tight end position here, I'm still not wanting to start this Bills tight ends. Obviously, both of them showed some good work. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid looked like a better pass catching tight end, but they're splitting the work down the middle. Until one of them kind of breaks free, until it's more like a 60-40 split and compared to a 50-50 split, I really don't want to start either one of these tight ends because they're getting limited. If you're starting one of them, you're expecting 8 points, and that's what you're getting from the day here, unless one of them scores a touchdown. Raiders side of the ball, not really starting Jimmy G unless you're in super flex leagues. Josh Jacobs, obviously, run back to him as a lock and loaded RB1. Devontae Adams, locked and loaded wide receiver 1, borderline wide receiver 1 without Jacoby Myers there. I don't know who steps up is for Jacoby Myers. Obviously, it's, you hope Hunter Renfrow kind of has that role now back. Hopefully, he saw a couple targets and did nothing with them in week 1 and basically played very minimal in week 1. Hopefully, his work kind of comes in for you. But again, he's not somebody you're starting. I'm not starting the tight ends for the Raiders this week. Again, it was a 2-back committee overall. Texans, Bills, or Colts defense this week. If I have to choose between those 3 there, I'm kind of going to go back to the Bills defense. They know how to create turnovers on that offense there. I think that the Colts could be a secondary option, but I'm going to stick with the team that I know has been dominant last year and into this year in terms of the pass here and on the run. So I'm going to stick with the Bills here. If you want upside, though, I would consider the Colts because of rookie CJ Stroud. But again, their defense wasn't too impressive in week 1. I know it was the Jaguars, but I would still stick with the Bills in this situation here for your matchup this week. Again, nothing much more to say about this game. Let's get over to the Bengals-Ravens here. When I'm thinking about the Bengals-Ravens here, obviously the quarterback situations on both sides of the ball, bad weeks for both teams. You have to assume that they're going to bounce back this week. Both very high-end, all-pro quarterbacks. You have to assume that both are going to get back into that QB1 range in week 2. You can't just shy it away from them after one bad matchup in week 1. We all have bad matchups. Running backs, Joe Mixon. I don't really want to start Joe Mixon if I can. You might be forced to in most situations, but he really hasn't done well over his time against the Ravens. He's just averaged about like 65 yards and only scored 3 touchdowns in his 11 games against the Ravens over his career. On the flip side, Gus Edwards, you could start him as a flex. Justice Hill is a desperate flex in PPR leagues. One of those guys are going to have to break through. Hopefully, we'll find out a little bit more in this week. I'm sure Melvin Gordon's going to carry the whole workload and call it a day on that. The receivers for the Bengals, you go back to Chase and you go back to Higgins. You just go back to them. Bad week 1. It is what it is. Ravens side of the ball, only one I really want to start is Zay Flowers still. Flowers just looked like the best wide receiver on this team. Him and Odell led the team in snaps and routes run. Rashad Bateman was nowhere near that in week 1 here. Flowers is the one I want to start. Even with Mark Andrews coming back, Zay Flowers is still the one I want to start overall. I think he has the target share, and his role, I think, is pretty secure in this offense. Again, Mark Andrews, if he plays, you start him at tight end 1. I don't even care. You start him as a tight end 1, and you just hope for the best from him, all right? Hopefully he is good to go, but he's a talent that you just can't sit. On the flip side, I'm not starting Irv Smith or anything like that. I mean, he had a couple good catches last week, but again, he's not there yet in terms of production for him. Seattle Lions, this is hopefully is going to be a shootout game, and I really want it to be a shootout game. I mean, Geno Smith hopefully comes back as a borderline QB1. So does Jared Goff, both borderline QB1s. I think they have both potential to finish as QB1s, but again, we'll see how that game goes. There's some risk, obviously, there with both sides. Ken Walker's a pretty good RB2, and he should continue to be an RB2 in this matchup here. I know the Lions defense has gotten better, but I'm still looking to start Ken Walker. He should be a pretty solid player to get you 10 to 12 points in this matchup here. On the flip side, Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously a locked and loaded borderline RB1 in this matchup here. David Montgomery, RB2. Look for Gibbs to see more work this week for sure. Wide receivers, you start DK Metcalf. I think, he looked like the best wide receiver out of this bunch in week 1. Tyler Lockett, he's okay. Maybe you start him as a flex option. Again, it really just depends on how you view him overall. And if you're expecting this team to bounce back, you start him. If you don't, then don't start him. Go a different direction here. I think this could be a shootout game. But again, we've seen games that we thought were going to be shootouts, and they turned to be very low-scoring games. JSN, I'm not starting him today, obviously. I mean, I like the potential, and it's hard to trust this offense outside the top 2 wide receivers to get a third wide receiver involved. So, Lions side, Amon St. Brown, you start him, wide receiver 1. No questions asked. Josh Reynolds, solid sleeper wide receiver this week here. He showed us he's going to be a part of this offense, and he's someone who can make plays downfield for us. Tight ends, Sam Laporta. Love Sam Laporta. He should definitely be a start in games this week here. I really want to have him in my starting lineup this week for sure. On the flip side, I am not starting a single Seattle tight end. Their tight end situation is a mess this week overall. Hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. There was had to answer a message back here, but yeah, I'm not starting a tight end from the Seattle team here. So, all right, Chargers Titans today. This one I'm hoping to be help boost up both these teams here. The Chargers obviously have a very favorable matchup. That Titans secondary was atrocious last year. They played a little better, but they got a ton of yardage last week. And I'm hoping the yardage is what's going to kick for a lot of these people. Justin Herbert, you start him as QB1 still. Keenan Allen, you start him as a high-end wide receiver 2. You start Mike Williams as a boomer bust wide receiver 2 play for this week here. Quentin Johnson's a nice sleeper this week. If he plays that similar role that Rashad Rashid for the Saints played, the guy that kind of deep threat goes downfield, would be really good for his value for today. I think he could end up having a good week. I'm not really trying to start Gerald Everett that much. I had lost faith in Gerald Everett that he just didn't do well last week here, and I really just can't assume that he's going to kind of get the rock this week here. Maybe with Austin Eckler out of this game here, that could be a situation where he ends up seeing more targets, but preferably don't want to start Gerald Everett. He doesn't have much upside for me. The biggest question is obviously Joshua Kelly. Do you start Joshua Kelly this week? Obviously with Austin Eckler out, you can start him as a flex. Just don't expect the same level of production. Obviously Austin Eckler is a talent. Joshua Kelly, is just a guy. I don't really think he's anything too special, and he's got a tough matchup. Again, Austin Eckler was already kind of down for me a little bit this week due to this matchup here. The Titans have been top 3 against fantasy RBs in the last 2 years now. They have been very elite against our running backs here. And unless Joshua Kelly is going to see 7 or 8 targets in this game, which Austin Eckler didn't see that in week 1, it's kind of hard to assume that he is going to see this gigantic workload. I think Isaiah Spiller and Elijah Dalton will get involved in this game as well. So I don't think the whole burden is going to be on Joshua Kelly, but he's a good enough value to flex. I think the opportunity will be there enough for him. Flip side, Derrick Henry. I love Derrick Henry in this matchup still. He's a borderline RB1. I'm not scared of Tajay Spears taking away work from him overall. I think you still go back to that situation. and he should be pretty good. Ryan Tannehill, unless you're in a super flex league, is a sleeper play. I'm not starting him, even though the matchup is fantastic. Obviously, we saw last week with the Chargers. You start Treylon Burks, I think, this week. DeAndre Hopkins is going to play, but I think he's going to be more of a decoy play than anything else there. There's no way you don't practice all week and decide to come in game and say, I'm going to play this whole game here without issues. Treylon Burks, I think, has a sneaky upside this week here that if you're looking for a boom or bust play, he's the guy this week. Chika Kwanka, his value is definitely better now, especially if Hopkins is kind of just there. Again, he's more of like a high-end 2 tight end. Again, his target share was 2 last week, 2 targets. It kind of scares me how big of a role he's going to have in this offense. Bears-Bucks. This should be a fun game here down in Tampa. Both quarterbacks. Obviously, you start Justin Fields. It's a QB1. I think Baker Mayfield is a really good streaming quarterback or at least a QB2 in Superflex leagues that you could start. The RBs for the Bears. Deontay Foreman is the third guy to me at this point here. And I think at some point, Roschon Johnson is going to be the one. I think you look for Khalil Herbert to take the early downs early on. Deontay Foreman will get his time in there, but Roschon Johnson's going to see like the passing work for sure in this offense. He's going to see the targets in this offense here. And he's going to have a couple, early down plays. And I think late in game, he could be used pretty well in this game here. Again, not trying to start either one of them because there's such a 3-back committee. I don't want to start any of them overall. Buckside, Rachaad White. I just talked about Rachaad White earlier on a question from somebody. Rachaad White should be back in lineups this week here. Again, he's a prime opportunity. Even though, yes, some of our backups got working and everyone seems to like the Sean Tucker news coming up, but Rachaad White is going to see another opportunity to be the workhorse in this backfield, and he has a much easier matchup against the Bears this week, who just allowed the Packers to run all over them in week 1. Wide receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both flex options for you this week. I think they're good enough plays for you where they're not going to hurt you, but they may not help you either. Cade Otton, not starting Cade Otton for shit. Again, not impressed with what he's going to give us probably in this matchup here. Wide receivers, you go back to DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a must start in this matchup here. I don't care about what happened last week with the 2 targets. He is going to find his way to rebound in this game here. They're going to get him the ball this week. Expect 6+ targets from him in this matchup here. Darnell Mooney, definitely an interesting sleeper play this week here. I think what we saw out of him, there's a possibility that he ends up playing pretty well. Again, I always said that Darnell Mooney needed to be the wide receiver 2 for a team and would thrive in that role and do very well. And now that he's in that role here, you saw in week 1, had a good week. Again, late touchdown, but still a really good week from him. Cole Kmet, he's a tight end 1. Plain and simple. You start him back in your starting lineups. No issues there. All right, over to the next game here. I'm going a little slow here today. Chiefs, Jags, you start your studs here. Start Mahomes, start Trevor Lawrence. You start Calvin Ridley, start Travis Kelce that he's playing today. Fantastic. You start those guys. Evan Ingram is a decent tight end 1 you can start here for sure. I'm not trying to start any of the Chiefs wide receivers this week. I'm really not. I just want to see it again. Give me another set of target shares in week 2, and then maybe I'll go from there. The Jags wide receivers, Christian Kirk, major disappointment. Obviously, seeing that he's turning to just a slot wide receiver here. Not great for fantasy, obviously. I still hopefully that they kind of rebound with him and you can flex him if you need to. And that's about it. Zay Jones is a nice wide receiver 4. That could continue to surprise us. The running backs, you start Travis Etienne. Obviously, Travis Etienne had the workload there. I think Bigsby is not there yet to take that 50-50 split yet. Maybe at some point, but not right now. Isaiah Pacheco is starting. You start him as a RB2 this week here. Jared McKinnon could be a solid surprise, especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think is going to be out in this matchup this week here. So I think you could get away with starting him this week for sure in this matchup. All right, another divisional game here. Colts Texans. I'm starting Anthony Richardson. If you're in a 1 QB league, I think you can start him. I think he showed enough in week 1 that you could start him in this matchup here. Again, it's risky because the Texans are a good secondary, and they kind of shut down Lamar last week, even though that the Ravens destroyed them. But he did shut him down slightly. So keep that in mind. But he's a boom or bust QB1 every single week. If you're going to put him in your lineup, he's a boom or bust guy. TJ Stroud, you're obviously sitting. Damian Pierce, you start him as a low-end 2. Zach Moss, you start as a low-end 2, I think, high-end 3. He's back in the starting lineup now. I think he's going to take work away from this offense overall. And then what you're looking at is the wide receivers here. You should look at the wide receivers you're going to play in this matchup here. I think Nico Collins is a play, is a flex option. I think Bob Woods is a desperate flex option. I think both will have a pretty good day overall. I think if you're going to look for a surprise in this matchup, it's Tank Dell. Tank Dell is a speedster for the Houston Texans, and he has a good connection already with CJ Stroud. He already had 4 catches this past week here. He could be a big surprise with Noah Brown on IR for the next 4 games. I look out for that. The wide receivers from the Colts only starting Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman was one of 6 players. 2 of them actually were Michael Pittman that actually had good games against the Texans over the last 18, 19 games. You start Michael Pittman for sure. Rams 49ers here. Nice, another divisional game here. This is going to be tough. Obviously, you start your 49ers. You start Debo. You start Ayuk. You start Kittle. You start Christian McCaffrey. Pretty self-explanatory there. Do you start Brock Purdy in a 1 QB league? Probably not yet, but he's getting there. He's getting there to the point where I'm almost just about there to trust him in a 1 QB league. But yeah, he should have a pretty solid game. He should finish as a borderline QB1, maybe a high-end QB2 in this matchup here. Matthew Stafford, it's a tougher matchup for him. Again, he looks healthy, so that's a good thing. But again, I want to see what this offense does. Maybe they pass the ball where he actually throws the touchdowns in instead of run and has someone run them in for him. So I'm not starting him in the tough matchup. The Rams running backs, I don't want to start. Kerryon Williams would be the one I flex if I had to, but I don't want to start either one of them in this matchup here. Puka Nacua, do start him. If he's playing, you start it. You start him as flex. Pretty self-explanatory there. You start 15 targets. He might not see 15. He might see 8 or 9. Still want to start him. I don't want to start the other 2 wide receivers. I want to see it again from Tutu Atwell first. And Van Jefferson got disappointed in week 1. I think his role is just kind of not there for him to see big target shares. Tyler Higbee, he's an okay tight end if you want to start him overall, but he's not great. This game is atrocious here. I don't want to start anyone almost in this game here. The Giants looked terrible last week. Obviously, they got destroyed in the offensive line there. The Cardinals, they have a terrible offense, but their defense is a big surprise this year. The way they pressured the Commanders in week 1, I think they could do that against the Giants in week 2 here, and everyone's back on the Giants. Oh, they're going to be great. They're going to be great. It might not be that. I think this could be a very low-scoring outing between both of them, where I think Darren Waller, Saquon Barkley, and James Conner are the only ones I'd consider giving starts to, obviously, in this matchup. Everyone else, don't want anything to do with. All right, Jets-Cowboys. This could be a bloodbath, or it could be the most lowest-scoring game possible here. Both defenses, elite offenses. Cowboys favored, obviously. I don't want to start Dak. I'm starting Tony Pollard still in this game here. Start CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, Brandon Cooks is out in this matchup here. Jake Ferguson becomes a great tight end in week 2 to go after again. He didn't have a great week 1, but he saw 7 targets in week 1 and 5 in the red zone. Dak Prescott loves his tight ends, and if you're looking for a tight end to stream this week, go back to Dak Prescott. Go back to Jake Ferguson. Michael Gallup becomes a little bit more of a high-end wide receiver 4 now that you could consider to start in a 3 wide receiver league flex. Jets side of the ball, I'm starting Breece Hall still. I don't care what week 1 showed us here. I don't think the Cowboys defense is going to put up 40 points again. And it's completely just stop an offense. They're going to stop him, but I think Breece Hall will have his day here, obviously. I wouldn't start Dalvin Cook. Garrett Wilson, we mentioned kind of before. I don't want to start Garrett Wilson, but if you need a flex play, again, he's going to see at least 6 targets, hopefully, and that's enough for me to flex him at least. Obviously, you don't start Zach Wilson. You don't start any other Jets wide receivers. You don't start Tyler Conklin. Commanders, Broncos. Again, this game could be one or two ways. It could be very low scoring, or it could be a surprise game. The quarterbacks, I don't want to start them unless you're in Superflex leagues. Both kind of disappointed in week 1. I want to see better from them in week 2. Running backs, both have split backfields here. All their backfields are RB3s here in this matchup here because they're just split. And I don't know who's going to see more work overall here. I know the Commanders looked a little different than what the Broncos gave us, but all RB3s at best here. You start them in the flex options and hope for the best. I think upside, Javonte, floor, Samaje. If you're looking for a floor on the other side, it's Brian Robinson. Antonio Gibson becomes a boomer bust play as an RB. Wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy is back. don't want to start Jerry Jeudy, but as in a wide receiver 3, I think he's worth the risk because he has a good connection with Russell Wilson. He's had his best season last year with Russell Wilson. Courtland Sutton definitely drops down to more a wide receiver 3 value at best here. Adam Trotman is definitely a sleeper tight end that you could consider in deeper man leagues. Commando side, Terry McLaurin's an okay. Again, I don't like his role for Sam Howell. Just doesn't fit that system very well now. He's a wide receiver 3. Jahan Doxson's a wide receiver 3. Logan Thomas has the sleeper potential in this matchup here because his involvement as how this offense works is very tight end heavy. So he could be an interesting factor. Dolphins, Patriots. Obviously a big Dolphins fan. Obviously here, as you can see in the background here. Dolphins, Patriots. Again, these teams play each other, very low scoring games sometimes. Sometimes it's kind of blowouts. Again, I'm expecting the Dolphins offense to continue to be in high gear here. It might not be what they were in week 1. Maybe expect half of that. Tua is a borderline tight end quarterback 1. He doesn't really do that well against the Patriots. But again, this offense is really different. So I'm hoping that's going to be able to break the curse. Tyreek Hill's a wide receiver 1. Jalen Waddle's a wide receiver 2. Raheem Mostert, I don't really want to start him this week here. I think it's a really bad matchup overall. He didn't really impress on the ground. He doesn't have a receiving game to his play. So I don't really want to start him. He's an RB3 at best. Darman Smythe, the tight end, surprised in week 1, but not starting him in week 2. Other side, Mac Jones is definitely a sleeper in Superflex leagues. If Miami just let up what they did in week 1, I don't know if they'll do that again, but Mac Jones is definitely a sleeper, especially what he did show in week 1. Ramondre Stevenson, locked and loaded RB1. Zeke Elliott is a flex option. I think you can start him. I think, and here he saw enough work to prove that he's going to be part of this offense pretty entirely. So I do like him. Wide receivers, I don't want to start any of the wide receivers here. I want to see another week of what this target share is going to look like for these guys. So I don't want to start them. Hunter Henry's a good tight end 1 to start. I think Dolphins have been terrible against tight ends. I think he has a good enough connection with Mac Jones that I'm okay starting him. Mike Gesicki, revenge game, but I don't expect him to really do too much with that. So, all right, Panthers Saints, another divisional game here. Panthers side of the ball. Bryce Young, not starting Bryce Young. No, definitely not starting him. Miles Sanders is an okay low end RB2. Again, he doesn't have the receiving role like I thought he wasn't going to. At least a third down role. Definitely a little concerning there, but as long as he can run for 70 yards and catch 4 passes, he's okay. I don't want to start any of the wide receivers for the Panthers. There was such a terrible game in week 1 that I just don't see them really. I want to see someone break free before I start any of them. So Hayden Hurst, great week 1 performance. Love that from him. But tough matchup in week 2. I'm assuming one of the wide receivers will break out, but who knows who's going to be. Everyone saw the same target share basically. No one really stepped up. Maybe DJ Shark, who didn't play in week 1. Saints side, I do like Derek Carr as a sleeper in this matchup here. I think he could end up having a really good game at home. I know he's on the road this week. Have a good game. If you're looking at the running back position here, Jamal Williams is a big play this week. Panthers just let up like 2 RB1s in week 1. Jamal Williams should have himself a really good game. I'm not scared of the rookie Kendrick Miller coming in. I don't think he gets a big workload in his first game back or first game of his career. Wide receivers, Chris Olave, wide receiver 1. Michael Thomas, low-end wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 2. Rashard Rashid is a deep sleeper in this game. I think he continues to impress us, and people are just not seeing what I'm seeing out of him. He looks pretty good. Hey, Kyle, what's going on, buddy? Tight end for the Saints here. Jawan Johnson's obviously starting tight end. He's an okay play. He's doesn't really have that upside, though. Obviously, because the wide receivers there seem to be getting a lot of love in this offense, and the way that the Saints tight end room looks, it's just very crowded overall. And again, he's not a big upside play, but he'll give you 4 or 5 points probably. And to some tight ends, that's a lot of points. So he's an okay play in this matchup here. And the last one of the night, guys. Told you 30 minutes, I'll be done. Steelers Raiders here. This should be an interesting game. Last year, though, the game was only like 13-10 last year. So I'm hoping to look for a little bit more out of both these teams here. They both kind of gave up yardage in week 1 here. Kenny Pickett. Oh no, not Steelers. I'm sorry. That's the next week game. I apologize. It's Steelers Browns. I'm thinking way too far ahead. I'm already in week 3, guys. It's Steelers Browns in this matchup here. And again, another divisional game. I want nothing to do with the Steelers offense in this matchup. The Browns defense is legit and they look scary. Kenny Pickett got most of his yardage in garbage time in week 1 here when they were down already by 15, 20 points. Don't want to start Kenny Pickett. Did not look good. Najee Harris is at best a flex option in this matchup here, honestly here. Oh, Kyle, thanks for tuning in. Start 3. Tyler Algier, Checo, Jamal Williams. Oof. I want to start Jamal Williams. I already said he's a locked and loaded RB2. I just got news that the Falcons plan on continuing to split the workload in Atlanta. So Tyler Algier has got to be a start. I mean, if he's going to continue to see the same workload, I want to start him in this matchup here. And it comes down to Isaiah Pacheco and Marquise Brown. What Joshua Dobbs showed me in week 1 was absolutely terrible. And I don't know how I can go back to a guy who looked that bad in the offense here. Again, the Giants defense isn't terrible. So I'm going to go with Isaiah Pacheco. It is supposed to rain in Jacksonville today, so it could be more of a run game that Isaiah Pacheco would fit his style up the middle kind of play here. So I do like Isaiah Pacheco. I'd probably start all 3 running backs over Marquise Brown. And then tight end Logan Thomas and Jawan Johnson. I'm going to go with Logan Thomas here. Again, I just mentioned Jawan Johnson. Here, give you 5 points, but Logan Thomas is going to be a part of this Commanders offense here, and they want to use a veteran tight end presence here, and Logan Thomas is going to be that guy here. I'm going to go with Logan Thomas in the matchup against the Broncos. And then team out of nowhere here. Love the name. What's up? Start 2 full point PPR. Puka, Godwin, Judy, and Burks. Oof. This is fun one. I like this one here a lot here. I'm going to go Puka. I'm not scared of his injury here. I'm going to start him in full point PPR. I'm going to continue to rock with him. I don't want to start Jerry Jeudy off a hamstring injury in the first game back here. I think it's a little risky overall. So for me, it comes down to Burks and Godwin. And I'm going to go with Godwin in this matchup here. I think Godwin's a safer play. Burks could be a surprise, though. He could be, if you're looking for more of an upside play, I think Burks is the way to go in that situation because it depends on what goes on with DeAndre Hopkins. I think he might just be more of a decoy today, but Burks has a big ceiling, but the floor is kind of low. I don't think he's going to be a guy who sees 7 targets for 70 yards and get you a solid 14. I think Chris Godwin can do that for you. Burks could possibly do more. I think Godwin's doesn't have the upside, so I would go with Puka and Godwin, but if you want to switch in Burks for Godwin for more of an upside play, that's what I would go in that situation. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And then we have Collins, Sutton, and Zay Jones here. I'm going to go Nico Collins in this matchup here. Nico Collins looks like the wide receiver 1 on this Houston team here. What I saw from the Colts cornerbacks last week was not pretty here. Nico Collins should be in for a pretty solid game overall. I mean, he saw double-digit targets in week 1 here. I continue to see what he should do with that. And in the divisional game here, give me Nico Collins in this matchup here. Finally, he is starting to come through, and hopefully his season continues to be successful here. All right. Thanks for tuning back in, my friend. I saw you on Thursday, so I appreciate you joining us back in. So I start Zay Flowers over Terry McLaurin. Yes, absolutely. Especially if it's any kind of half-point PPR or full-point PPR. Absolutely. I'm not scared of Mark Andrews coming back in this matchup here. I still think Zay Flowers is the guy who will be the underneath guy on this offense here. I think that he's going to continue to see 8+ targets in this matchup. Terry McLaurin, he was coming off that foot injury. His role should expand, but I just don't think he fits the way the Washington Commanders offense wants to run this overall. So I think that Zay Flowers is the better play here, especially if it's any kind of PPR or anything like that. So I do like that from him. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate that. Ryan, that's what I was thinking of. Perfect. I'm glad we are on the same page here. Absolutely. I always love a good backup. I do. I ask from all my friends, like, hey, just let me know what you think here. So start Joshua Kelly over Najee Harris, pay King. Yeah, I think you could start. I think you should start Joshua Kelly in this matchup here. Najee Harris did not do well last year against the Browns, and this Browns defense is continuing to look really scary, and I don't want any part of that Steelers offense. I just mentioned that. Joshua Kelly doesn't have a good matchup either, but I do expect that the Chargers will be in more opportunities to be near the goal line, which will then probably give Joshua Kelly opportunity to score. Unlike with Najee, I don't expect too often that the Steelers are going to be within inside the 10 to give Najee that opportunity to score. I do believe that will be for the Chargers and Joshua Kelly. So I would start Joshua Kelly in this matchup here. Again, I'm going to probably wrap this up soon. If anyone has any final questions, please throw them in the chat here. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. I didn't think I did the other side of the last game of the night, the Browns game here. Obviously, I think Deshaun Watson's a decent QB1 that you can start. It's kind of like a borderline. I like to see a little bit better out of him. He kind of was a sloppy play in week 1. Again, it's bound to happen early on in the season here. Nick Chubb obviously is a really good RB1 in this matchup here. I expect nothing besides 100 yards out of him and hopefully a touchdown. Jerome Ford had like 13 carries in week 1. That was just garbage time. Don't worry about that. Amari Cooper is dealing with the injury. He came back up on the injury report this past week here. So I would consider not really starting Amari Cooper. I think at best he's a flex option. I don't think he's a confirmed RB2 in this wide receiver 2 in this matchup. I am looking for a guy like Elijah Moore to step up in this matchup here, and I think he'll end up having a pretty good day. I like what I saw out of him. I'd like to see a little bit more in terms of targets and more downfield throws for him. But he could be definitely a nice sleeper this week. And again, obviously, if Amari Cooper is banged up, Donovan Peoples-Jones becomes a legit deep sleeper option for your in this matchup this week here. Again, he didn't do good in week 1, but he has that deep threat presence, kind of like what Brandon Ayuk showed us in week 1, that get the ball downfield and someone's going to make plays over the secondary. And then David Njoku, definitely tight end 1. Again, he should be pretty solid. He did do well in one game last year against the Steelers. Hopefully he can kind of get back at it, especially if Amari Cooper is dealing with an injury that keeps him off the field for most of the game. So, yeah. So that's going to wrap up my morning show, guys. If you guys have any final questions, I will wait another 30 seconds here. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, asking your questions in the chat here. Again, if you can, subscribe to our fantasy channel. We go every Monday and Thursday, and obviously it looks like Sunday now, talking fantasy, whether it's waiver wire, starting and sits, or just last minute start and sit questions, talking about some injury news, obviously from the weekend here. Appreciate it if you guys could do that for us. And again, always tune in, ask your fantasy questions. We will answer them within seconds on the chat here. We're not we're not a group that's not going to ignore you guys. We want to help you guys build championships. Hopefully you guys enjoy your week 1. If you have any final questions, and maybe I'm offline at that point, hit us up on our Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. You can just ask us any fantasy questions there, and I'll probably be on there answering questions for the rest of the day. So thanks all for tuning in. Tune in until we come back on Monday, and hopefully your week 2 goes to plan.